we've been flirting with the idea of symbolism, metaphors, fairy tales. You brought up Jack and the Beanstalk as well, and how we use that in stories. Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson had this public debate about religion once. And I found it very interesting that they spent a large chunk of that debate talking about storytelling. And one of the areas of concern was the usage of metaphors in stories. They derived this concept called metaphorical truth, which is just the concept that something is factually not true, but you assume it is true in the form of a story because it gives you some benefits if you make that assumption. So, for example, porcupines, we know, cannot shoot their quills, but there is a story around that. If you mess with the porcupine, it'll shoot its quills at you. And the benefit is that you will not end up messing with the porcupine. Keep yourself away from danger and the animal as well. We find similar analogies in religion as well. And we also find analogies in how parents school their kids. So there's Santa Claus, monsters under the bed, tooth fairy. Just the assumption of these metaphors, these imagined realities. Of course, we know they don't exist. Just if the belief is set in those premises, then the kids end up behaving. They end up behaving a way that you want them to. So the question that ties out from this is, of course, the usage of metaphors is very heavy in stories.
Yes.
Jordan Peterson's argument is that it helps you package an idea in an easily retained, easily repeatable form. And what Sam Harris is saying that, no, it's not a good tool because the story then ends up becoming a distraction from this message you're trying to convey, and people end up focusing on the inaccuracy, on the mysticism of it. Where do you stand on this?
Well, not surprisingly, I'm kind of standing on the side of the metaphor, really. Metaphor, the origin of the word metaphor, it means to carry over. And what you're doing with a good metaphor is you're using one thing, familiar thing, to carry over the meaning of another. So if you talk about, and we do it all the time, we speak in metaphors all the time. So we talk about, I don't know, the president of the United States is the father of the nation. Would be it's like we use family metaphors constantly. We use physical metaphors. We talk about, I don't know, a stormy meeting. Well, we're using a weather metaphor. We do it constantly. Again, there is some data out there on how often in conversation we use metaphors or similes, and it's a lot. And ultimately, here's an interesting thing. Ultimately, all metaphors come back to the body. Yeah. So the human body. So you talk about a stormy meeting. Well, that's a weather metaphor, yes, but we feel the weather on our bodies when the rain comes. So it's that kind of, or we feel the fear of the storm in our body. So actually, every metaphor ultimately comes back to, why? Well, because we all share the physical body. This is why we are never going to get, I don't believe, AI, artificial intelligence, that really speaks to us like a human. It'll be a trick. It'll be a trick because we everything comes back to the body. Okay, so yes, I'm a great believer in metaphor. I think if you can come up with an original metaphor, and great writers do this all the time, then it carries meaning. And Churchill in 1950 coined the term the Iron Curtain, talking about the Iron Curtain dividing Eastern Europe from Western Europe. And it's a great piece of language. Curtains shouldn't be made of iron, but they are. In his so it's when it happens, when people do it, when people create these kind of vivid mental images, they capture the argument.
Yes.
So in the UK, we briefly mentioned Brexit before. The slogan that captured the argument was "Take back control," and apparently it came from a parenting manual. Apparently, but there was people were making tremendous efforts to make an economic case, a financial case, why remaining as part of the European Union was better for Britain. And those arguments just weren't landing. They just weren't sticking with people. But the idea of taking back control, well, it works at a kind of democratic, political, legal level, but it also works at this kind of bodily level of we don't like to feel out of control.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas economics does not touch us in the same way. Political debates tend not to touch us at all. So Sam Harris is just to the Sam Harris side. Look, there are all kinds of areas where it's not where a detailed technical understanding is more important than a compelling story. Yes, without a doubt. If I'm going to go into an operating theatre and be operated on by a surgeon, or when my plane is coming into land and I'm thinking about the air traffic controller, I want someone who's technically highly specialised. I don't care whether he or she can tell a decent story.
Yeah.
I just want them to land my plane.
Yes.
So but typically, sadly or happily, depending on your perspective, the good storytellers get the credit.